Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Daniel. I contributed to Stories2Connect.
Hi, I'm Matthew. I was part of the Stories2Connect project.
Hi, my name's Kath Harkins. I'm Professor of Childhood Studies.
Hello, I'm Melvin Burgess. I'm a writer, mainly of fiction for young adults. I was working on the Stories2Connect.
I'm Evie. Well, he was telling us how to make proper stories.
I know he gave us ideas on how to interview people.
Tips and ideas on how we could make our stories more interactive.
Hi, I'm Candice Satchwell. I led the AHRC-funded Stories2Connect research study.
So I was involved as what you call a research associate. So they interviewed me, and I've never had an interview like that. I was involved in just about everything, I think. Doing lots of stuff behind the scenes and planning and organising and fun as well.
The young people who were already involved, they helped plan some training for the new young researchers. And we ran a 2-day event at the University of Central Lancashire, where the experienced young people co-facilitated workshops where they explained their idea for the project, helped the new young people redefine the project and shape it to be what they wanted it to be. And then they trained them to think about things like confidentiality and how you could do an interview. And actually, they helped us think about that at the same time.
At first, I was a bit nervous, but then when I got used to doing it, I got the hang of doing interviews.
And you ask me questions about my childhood and my life and what brought me to do the job that I'm doing, things like that. And I thought that was really nice. That was an absolute highlight. I was really surprised when ages down the line I got an email from Candice, and then she said there's been a story made. So that was fantastic. That was a really big surprise.
Some of it was quite challenging though. We had to work out how to get people to tell us their stories. We had to practice and learn how to interview, which is quite hard, isn't it? We had to make sure that people felt happy talking to us about things that might have been quite difficult.
I loved going out doing the interviews. I can remember, I remember going out with Thomas, hearing not only from the young people we worked with, but the interviews they did with their friends and people from other groups. Just the sheer kind of resilience and strength, and some of the things that some of the young people have been through, and it was really humbling. It's the human aspects of it, really.
Before we actually did interviews with other young people, we did a lot of training, and we used to interview each other about our stories and take notes during the while they were speaking. And it was really interesting to hear some people's experiences of going through education, even through the KERS system. And then when we actually went to the proper interviews, when we was actually interviewing other young people outside of the co-researchers, there was one story I got from someone, and it was truly empowering to hear this young person's voice and what they've actually been through, and to see that where they were in today. It was like, you've gone through all of that, and you still come out on top, like, even when life's threw a lot of rocks at you.
My name is Adele Guerras, so I've been a children's writer. I was just proud to be part of something that helped people who don't normally get listened to be listened to, really. That's the main thing, just giving people a voice.
We experimented in different ways of asking questions. So young people would come up with ways of saying, well, how can you ask somebody about challenge in a way that's sensitive? Or how can you look and find out more detail behind what it is that they're telling you? So over weeks and then eventually months, we co-created an interview guide, which the young people then took out to do the interviews with other children in the community.
I was trying to get them to talk to one another and interview one another and sort of, delve into their own pasts and to try and find, make their own stories out of their own lives, and also to a degree talk to one another and trying to find some stories that might be in other people as well, real life stories.
I think I partially took part in story writing, but in a like a slightly different way. I actually helped someone make their own story for their animation. It's Rosie.
Yeah.
That was Rosie. I helped write the story and brought some of my inspirations towards it about me, my life, my interests, my family. Yeah, and that animation became a reality.
We also worked with Paul and Dan from Lancaster University.
We had these little digital inventions. They came in a variety of forms. There was one that was like a computer. There was one that was shaped like a briefcase. Basically, you'd take these pieces relating to the stories themselves. You'd scan them on this pad, and they would show the stories in visual form.
iPad, but there might be objects that you pick up and hold, and it connects you with the child that has a connection to that object and tells the story in different ways. Having something that's interactive and they can touch and they can change things and they make it play different sounds and put the face on it, makes it much more enjoyable, much more engaging for the children. We really want people to engage with the stories rather than just reading them passively. The main part of the project's here with UCLan, who are doing more of the storytelling side and liaising with Bernardo's and the other organisations.
Once we'd all been out doing interviews and thinking about what it means to tell a story, we started to think about, well, how could you put those stories into an object? And we went to the design studios at Lancaster University and worked with Paul and Dan to try out things like embedding something in a chip that you wore on a bracelet, and to think about, well, what other ways might there be of telling stories? And they showed us some of the things they'd done in the past. Because the other thing that we did in that space, in that design studio, was to think about, well, what are the connections between different people's bits of story? So we had bits of paper all over where we were connecting things from one interview to another, making piles, and finding ways of thinking, well, this is the important bit of this story, so we're going to make sure that this is included somewhere.
Mine was Nick's Riddle, and it's about a boy who has a SEN, and he's going through his day-to-day life, and an incident basically happens, and it stops his entire world.
It's an example, and it's a kind of vindication. And here's what you've got at the end of it. You've got a collection of stories, and stories don't go off. They'll always be there.
We've given lots away to Bernardo's and all the young people that they work. There are lots out there. We've had lots printed and we've distributed lots of them. So children in schools are reading them, and young people at college are reading them, and young people in Bernardo's. But the problems, jobs are like hen's teeth. They're really difficult to come by.
Yes.
And this is what one of you said. One of the people that you interviewed said, jobs are like hen's teeth, and that became the title of that story because that was a really important thing for a lot of you. Of course, the stories that we made in Stories2Connect. A lot of that was about challenging stereotypes. The stories about people with autism or people with disabilities or people who find it difficult to go out or whatever. All of those things are addressed through the stories and from Stories2Connect.
Doing the digitals, it was like, wow, all these stories being easily accessible to anyone with SEN, even with speech impairments or hearing problems, they was all be able to listen to it. It wasn't just stuck to someone who is the copy and paste human.
Well, you see, it takes the form of a suitcase, but inside it basically has this machine net with a screen next to it. And there's also this pedestal which you can put like 3D printed figurines onto it. And there's this chip underneath it that gets scanned by the pedestal on the animation, and like the story comes into the story comes into the screen. Yeah, it makes sense that it's a suitcase because a story is like a journey, and suitcases are I want to take on that journey.
I'd say my favourite digital was the wand, the rabbit.
I talked about it in front of hundreds of people, or at least it was hundreds in my eyes.
It was hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah, it felt like it too.
We all went to Canada together. Yeah, it was a brand new experience, especially for me. Yeah, it's a conference, yeah. We gave a presentation explaining about Stories2Connect, and at the end I gave a little bit of a speech at the end, and everybody loved it, and I felt so humble about it.
Yeah, they loved it. They actually thought I was really brave.
And I remember one woman saying she was in tears at the end. And she said that watching the animation that you'd created helped her understand her life and her child's life much, much better.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful.
I remember going to the final event. I think that was in Lancashire, actually, in Lancaster. Anyway, that was that was a lot of fun. The kids reading out their stories.
So how have you enjoyed it?
I loved it. I still do. I feel like we're still doing it.
Yeah, we are still doing it. We've got more funding to do this video.
Yes,
and I'm really happy we've got this funding. It means we can show what we've done.
We had to do something to take these wonderful inventions out into the world so that they could speak to other people. We took a rabbit and a hat to a cafe in a park. We took over parts of the museum. We learned a lot about what works as reaching out.
It's still getting out there. The stories, what we went out and collected and interviewed, still are getting out there and still are helping people. So it is pretty inspiring.
We can also communicate how to do research or helping them feel like they're not on their own.
Helping like young kids to read more of their books, of these books. Got nice simple words, and just like get ready for read the book. Understand that each book can be one book really good. Next book, really good. Next and next and next.
So as we came towards the end of doing Stories to Connect, we started thinking about other projects, and Will, one of the young researchers, came up with the idea of doing some research in Japan. We used the things that we learned together about how to do research as the basis of developing some training. Certain young people came to Japan, helped disabled young people over there think about what they wanted to investigate. Together they did a research project which covered the two countries and finding out about rights being respected and what needed to change. What have we learned from Stories to Connect and what has it done? It's taught us, and it continues to teach other people, that the things that are really important for children and for young people, especially those in difficult circumstances, are about feeling like they can make a difference in the world.
Being a part of the Stories Connect project and then being able to, from that, link into other projects like JUK, it's been really good just to be able to connect, make sure our voices are all heard in different groups.